for your Talking Basketball Podcast.
Hello, welcome to another edition of the Talking Basketball Podcast. I am Mark.
I am Paul.
Hello. That was a loud one, wasn't it? Well, we're going to try and compress it this week. Thank you. Welcome back. If you haven't been to other episodes, go back and have a listen. We're doing a short one this week, aren't we?
We are doing a short one.
We're trying to be streamlined like a racing snake.
Yes, we are.
You know, it's going to go horribly wrong, but.
Can I just start by saying a huge thank you to our 22,500 listeners. Thank you. That is amazing.
That's this month alone.
Yeah, that's really, really cool. And also, please email ukbasketballpodcast@gmail.com and tell Mark what BBL team you want him to support.
Yep.
If you don't know what you want to say, just send him the word Lions in that email. ukbasketballpodcast@gmail.com.
No.
Right. Oh, man, what's happened? Oh, I muted that by mistake, I think.
Do it again.
Is it on? Right, Mark, I'm going to jump straight in. I want to talk about the Manchester Giants. You know I've got a soft spot for this team.
Yep.
But I want to say that they had a great week, and they had such a great week, I'm going to start with that.
Wow.
Now, first of all, I want to say that the Giants were coming off a 6-game losing streak, Mark.
Yeah.
They took on, I think it was 4 or 5 days ago, they took on the Bristol Flyers, and I knew it was going to be a good game because the corresponding fixture was really close. Okay, so it looked like it was going to be a fairly good game. The earlier fixture, Bristol took that win 91-87. That was the scoreline for that. But this time it was the Giants who claimed the win, 68-74.
Yeah, I have to wonder what happened to Bristol there, but.
Yeah, I think you might have a point, but you know, you brought up last time about the Giants. They only had 9 players and stuff like that.
Yes.
However, one of the things that really stood out was William Lee. He has been out for the majority of the season so far, and he came back against, I think it was the Eagles game was his first game, which was a loss. But before this game, but then he was in the starting lineup against the Bristol Flyers. So he is now back. And before the game, the head coach, Brian Simonian, he said, it's nice to have our roster a little bit more complete. So hopefully we can bring a little bit to Bristol that we didn't show them last time.
Interesting.
And I thought it was really interesting that he said that because you highlighted there was I think 9 players for a couple of games.
Yeah, there was.
So that was really interesting he said that. Also, do you know I said he scared me a little bit in some of the things? He was smiling in all these photos. He doesn't look as scary, which is nice. He comes across really, really switched on.
No, the only thing I know about that game was I think Bristol are missing someone, but I can't work out who it was.
Well, I'm going to go straight back to William Lee, Mark. This was his first game back in Manchester. William Lee, 19 points, 5 rebounds, 1 assist, and 2 steals.
It's pretty impressive, isn't it?
That is very impressive.
That's his second game back, you say?
That's his second game back, but first game back in Manchester. But he hasn't played all season from what I could see. And again, look, Nick Lewis, you got to talk about him. He is one of those foundation pieces, really impressive player. He ended the game with 23 points. Oh, crap. I don't know how many rebounds he got.
Oh, no.
Oh, no.
Well, I'm sure I can look it up right now for you. How about that?
Yeah, you look that up. But whilst you're looking that up, again, Jamal Anderson, he is Mr. Consistent, I think. He contributed 14 points, 8 rebounds, 4 assists, and 3 steals.
And so this is the game, Manchester against Bristol. Mr. Lee.
No, Nick Lewis. He's the one. I didn't know what his rebounds. If I'm guessing, I'd say 4 or 8.
4 or 8?
Yeah, that would be my guess.
4 rebounds.
4 rebounds. Okay, so
one assist, 1 steal, and 23 points.
Nice. So, Nick Lewis, Jamal Anderson, both really consistent. I feel harsh not mentioning Tevin Ollison from Bristol, because he had 26 points, 8 rebounds, and 7 assists.
And Jacob.
And other than Brad Green with 12 rebounds and Leslie Smith with 9 rebounds and 8 points, it was a quiet night for the Flyers. But if you got a spare 5-10 minutes, go and check the highlights out. And I want to talk about this game because it was an absolute comeback by the Giants. Now, look, Mark, when I say this, I want to see your face. In the third quarter, with 3 minutes left, the Giants were down by 16 points.
The third quarter.
Third quarter, they're down by 16 points with 3 minutes left. And they just slowly chipped away at that deficit.
It's not a high-scoring game.
No, not at all. But they just slowly chipped away at the deficit. And there was one thing at the start of the fourth quarter, they got back within 4 points.
Wow.
That just separated the teams towards the start of the fourth. Now, there was one thing, the Flyers didn't score in the fourth quarter until there were 2 minutes, 16 seconds left in the fourth quarter.
Yeah, something's not right there.
That is huge, I think. I mean, we watch those games where you look at it and go, hang on, have we actually scored yet? Like this quarter, you look at it and think it's really odd. But anyway, that stood out. But also, in that moment where they didn't score for the first 7.5 minutes, by that point, the Giants were up by 10. Another thing I would like to highlight was there was a timeout in the fourth quarter with less than 5 minutes left. And whatever the coach said at that point, whatever Brian Simonian said at that point, it had an effect on the team, and they started their run from there. So,
was that a home or away game?
That was that was away, I think.
That was away. So he probably said, if you lose this, you're walking home.
Yeah, he did a Mickey Byrne, didn't
he? Yeah. If you're walking from Bristol to Manchester, it is in the SGS College Arena.
So, look, what a comeback. What a comeback from the Giants. And
you got another Giants game, haven't you?
Yeah, I have, but I just want to really focus on that one, because what a comeback, what an exciting game. Something is not right at Bristol at the moment. So bear with me. Just going to hear some Irish crickets.
Classy. Well, as you've done them.
Oh, hang on. I've got that other game.
You've got the other game.
So then they took on the Lions at home. And even though Nick Lewis got 33 points, 7 rebounds, 4 assists and 4 steals, alongside Jamal Anderson's 21 points, 4 rebounds, 4 assists and 2 steals, it wasn't enough. Now, especially when you see Matt Morgan on fire for the Londons, ending up with 32 points, 3 rebounds and 6 assists. They just couldn't. They didn't have enough to beat the Lions. However, they only lost by 8 points. They only lost by 8 points. And again, it was great play from Jamal. The one that stood out was he got the ball from the halfway line. Like, he was just walking past he was running, but it looked like he was just walking past 2 or 3 players, then lays it up on the left-hand side of his left hand. That was a great play. They were down by half time by like 6 points, and they just never really got back into the game as far as that deficit was concerned. But the home crowd is the other thing I just got to highlight. The atmosphere at the NBPC arena was absolutely outstanding.
National Basketball Performance Centre.
Yes. Yeah. And you gotta give it to the Manchester fans. They know how to bring that noise. The players were talking about it. The coach was talking about it.
Quite a big one as well, isn't it? Like 3,000 or something. It's quite a big seater, I think. From when we did the show way back. If you haven't listened to that show, go back to have a listen. But we broke down each of the stadiums, didn't we? And I think Manchester was one of they had quite a lot of seating, like 2,500, 3,000, something like that.
Yeah, but
so I'd imagine it'd get noisy.
It was getting noisy there. Yeah. It was getting noisy. I think it was Nick Lewis even commented after the game about the home support is absolutely fantastic.
Good.
There. So unfortunately they got that loss, but they only lost by 9 points. Now they've, I think, played the Londons enough times that they only need to play them one more time in December. and that's it. They don't need to play the London Lions again.
Gets it out of the way, doesn't it?
Yeah, that's what I thought. And just want to highlight, even though they had a 92-84 loss, 8 points to top of the league, who are flying with it, the women played right after, won at the death, 75-72 against the Brawn Hatters. But going back to that quote I said from Brian Simonian, he said another quote after the London loss, which is, we played well in Bristol and showed tonight, which he's talking about London, that we're definitely on the rise and compete with anybody. What a great way to end, I think, the week. Even though they lost, they had that huge comeback against Bristol. They only lost to London by 8 points. They seem to be a thorn in London's side because the last game was fairly close as well. I know they lost the one before that, like 29 points or something like that. But the last two outings against London have been really close. Manchester, I salute your efforts this week. Well done.
Yeah, well, they're sitting ninth at the moment, and they're three wins, 10 losses, but they're, I think, game in hand compared to some of the others. And the Lions are still like 2 games ahead of everyone, I believe. But you're highlighting an interesting one about the Flyers. So I'm going to bring the game I watched, which was Flyers and Scorchers. I was a little shocked. The Scorchers took that one. And I was really surprised because when we were going from last week thinking, Bristol, we were talking about them as they're up in number 2, number 3 spot, dicing around.
Spiralling, aren't they?
Yeah. So you've had the first loss against Manchester, and was it Manchester won that, or was it Bristol lost it? When you watch the game, I only saw the highlights of that one. I thought, it was a good, Manchester earned that one. When you see the Surrey versus Bristol, Surrey played superbly. There's no question of that. And I want to highlight a guy called Andrew Lawrence. So when you look through the scoring, you can see there was a lot of tit for tat. One player on one team scored 12, another one scored 12, another scored 21, another scored 21, and rebounding, all the same. But Andrew Lawrence on the Scorchers added in 17 to the pot, and no one else had that. 17, I think 2 rebounds, 8 assists, and 1 steal. But he clearly was that extra person that made the difference for the Scorchers. But again, Manchester and Surrey, both teams who were towards the bottom and around the bottom. You're talking about Bristol, who were at the top. Manchester.
We were talking about league contenders at one point.
Exactly. And Bristol And there's clearly some gaps going on. I don't know if it's the not gelling in the team, or there's some injuries or things that I haven't picked up on, but very interesting that they're at 4th already now. They've slipped down from 3rd. They were 2nd a week ago. So they were 2nd 2 weeks ago. Then they slipped to 3rd. Now they slipped to 4th. That's really, really, really not good for them, shall we say.
The word, I think, is freefall.
Yeah, it is, isn't it?
We need to investigate that and look at why.
Going back early in the week, I want to go on the 17th. Sheffield Sharks versus Leicester Riders. And your friend Jalen Pipkins, did you see the full court shot he did?
Yeah, that's one of my points, but you can do it.
I gotta say, I saw that and thought, oh, you'll love that, because I know you like a bit of Jalen. But without question, Ramsey doing the behind the back pass in that game. That game, if you're going to go back and watch one at any point, go back and watch that game. It ended up 91-84. You think 7-point difference, but actually that game was close right to the end. And I know Sheffield and Leicester clearly have that rivalry of locality, etc. It showed in the game. But yeah, I've got to give those guys a shout out. And I think Pipkins ended up on 17 points, 4 rebounds, 4 assists.
And 3 steals!
I've got 2 steals down there.
Hey, it's 3.
Is it?
3, Mark.
Wow.
I love a steal. That's why I've been adding the steals in my shout out. But also, yes, really to highlight Jalen Pipkins. I hope he is in all-star contention. I'll be shocked if he's not. That's just my opinion on it. But the one play you're talking about was right at the end of the 3rd quarter. And it was Kimball McKenzie who came up, going down a lane. He makes a pass. But the thing is, I love about that play, Pipkin steals the ball.
Yes.
He steals the ball, and he's kind of moving to the baseline as he steals it. He turns around, sees the clock, boom, just punches up, Boom! 3 points, Pipkins. End of the third quarter.
2 steals. Just saying.
Well, I apologise for my inaccurate stats.
But no, that was a good game. And that's going to bring me on to 2 other quick games, which were both featuring Newcastle.
Oh, I got Newcastle here.
Which one have you got?
I've got quite a few games, Mark.
Okay, we'll do it then.
All right, Newcastle. We gotta salute you. Gotta talk about Newcastle and not talk about Newcastle's recent form. Newcastle fans, I think you need to say a huge thank you to the man, the legend, Keith White, because the reason I say this, Mark, because he came on the podcast, and since then Newcastle haven't lost, and they're really starting to show their form. Now, not everyone knows this, but what we do is, because we have guests and we've got the BBL show and sometimes other NBA shows or something like that, sometimes we have a backlog of interviews from guests. So we did Keith like a few weeks ago. So just before we had our chat to Keith, Newcastle lost to the Leicester Riders 111 to 88. Yeah. Keith White comes on the podcast. Newcastle fans, go and high five that man. He comes on the podcasts. Next home game against the Manchester Giants. Boom, win, 12 points. Game after that, away against the Patriots, 27 points, win. Back at home against the Patriots again, 16-point win. Then this is huge. Away win against the Gladiators, 9 points. Caledonia have now lost their first game in the Coliseum. Jordan Johnson with 24 points, 4 rebounds and 7 assists.
Yeah.
Ricky McGill, 18 points, 5 rebounds and 6 assists. And you've got to mention the inside presence of Josh Ward-Hibbert and Taj Green on the boards. They are just, feels like they're just cleaning up at the moment. In that last game, Devin Whitfield with 8 rebounds. You've got to mention him too. Also, probably got to mention those 12 points he got. But yeah, absolutely, Newcastle are starting to find their form. There's a really great article on Newcastle on the BBL website at the moment, so check that out. I know they update the stories fairly regularly, so check that out before you lose that one.
Yeah. 5th win in a row.
It is. And you know what made me smile in that interview? I don't know if anyone from the BBL is listening to this, but in that interview, they mentioned the word nest, Mark.
The nest.
They didn't say the eagle's nest, but they said, going back to the, what's the coach's name? His nest. And I was like, you're welcome. You're welcome for that name. So
for the Caledonia, I'd say I wanted to give a shout to Patrick Whelan and Farrow, because they both actually put in some really good stats, but they were the only, I won't say the only ones, but for Caledonia really kicking anything in on that game. I won't say it almost like was one-sided. It was like those guys holding up the fort for Caledonia. Everyone else really kind of contributed, but not very much.
Yeah, I mean, that's their Caledonia's first home loss. So that's huge.
Yeah.
But you know what? Keith mentioned this a little bit, and I think people need to really appreciate the fact that Newcastle signed 5 huge, big players.
Big signings.
And I think I'm using Keith's words. That kind of change needs time. It takes time for all that to adjust and those players to gel and get that cohesion. So yeah, I just want to highlight that Newcastle absolutely bloody flying at the moment.
Yeah.
And you know what, Newcastle fans, you got to give a shout out to Keith White, because since he came on the show, that's what's happened to Newcastle Eagles. So
Keith is the lucky charm.
He is.
And in that game against Plymouth, actually, that was, like you said, 16 points they won by. But both those games, Jordan Johnson's the one who really seems to be stepping up with in the Eagles. A couple of fadeaways, some crazy passing and stuff. It looks really, really slick as a player. But did you see the block from Wiley, one of the Plymouth guys? It just comes out of nowhere. It looks like
boom.
It looks like he's got the whole lane to himself, and he just spins off, bang, gets it. I like a defensive play, so I appreciate that. But in Plymouth himself, we actually saw the news this week that the CEO who's running Plymouth Patriots is actually stepping down.
Oh.
Yeah. And they put an announcement and they said, go to have a look on Plymouth's page, so you look about it. But basically he said, my business has got so hectic now that I can't juggle doing the team and doing my own business. So I think they'd notified him about like 12 months ago. And we were like, look.
Is there buyers? Are there buyers?
I don't think it's a case of that because he's the CEO, so he's like running the team. So I think there's going to be someone who's going to be announced.
Oh, so he's still going to be involved. He's just going to step back.
Yeah. So well, in his statement, I think it was quite nice the way he put it. It's like, I'm still going to be at the games. If people want to come and chat to me.
Mark?
What, for Plymouth?
Yeah.
Yes, a little bit of a trek, isn't it?
Dedication.
But seriously, that he said I've given them. They've had a lot of notice. They knew this was happening 12 months ago, but this is like the official bit now of. So I don't think it's anything that's a surprise that's come to them But from what I can understand with Plymouth, for those who do or don't know, Plymouth used to have a team which were the Raiders, and the Raiders used to be the BBL team, and then that went into administration, and then they spun the Patriots out of that, and the Raiders are now in the NBL. They've actually played the local team here, Portsmouth Force, so they're in that division now, the Raiders, and they're going to be working their way back up. And the Plymouth turned into the Patriots, and that to enable them to keep a BBL team. And so, the CEO was one of the guys who was there at that time, helping that transition. So that's a shame, because I think it's fair to say we've got a soft spot for each of the teams in their own way. But Plymouth, they got that great crowd, and they've obviously Pat Riots. He's still going to be sticking around, but
Pat Riots, they cannot, they cannot do without him.
No,
he's a legend.
No, absolutely not. But the other games really this week, I won't say have been not by the by, but the other main one was Cheshire and Surrey Scorchers.
I knew you were going to bring that up.
Yeah, they got absolutely pounded. Cheshire just showed them the way. There was a fantastic dunk, and that was Aaron Ray. But I like Aaron as a player, and I think they featured him quite highly because he was an NBL player from Div 1, and he stepped into the BBL. But he got the alley-oop from Cam Christen. And that, ending on 25, Cam's ending on 13 as well. But it was just sort of there was a clear difference between their team and the other team. So, that actually pushed them into second position now. So Cheshire are now second in the table.
Wow. There you go.
Yeah, so congrats to them.
The
Phoenix rise to number 2.
Rising. But you got to say the BBL, just highlighting again, there is only 4 points between second place and sixth place. And there's 6 points between second and seventh place.
Yeah, and the table, I'm just showing Paul a little graphic here. It's the one that the BBL do, which I do like. It just shows you how much, and every single week we look at it and you see the same thing. It's like there's arrows, it's movement, there's constant movement, there's always things happening every single week. Our focus
is very much...
do they hand the trophy out now, Paul?
Yes, I've said that before. Do it. Yeah. Do it. Give them the trophy now. But
14-1.
Yeah. Anyway, that's a great week. So let's see what comes next for the BBL. But,
it's going to be very interesting to see what's happening. I'll be interested to see what's going to happen with Bristol. They seem to have fallen off the wagon for some reason.
But I got a huge one now.
Have you?
I got a huge bit of news.
Okay.
And everyone will know what I'm talking about now when I say NBA news. And I think we should do actually, in fairness, do a podcast dedicated just to this moment.
Okay.
Which is, let's hear a big shout out to LeBron James. Whether you like him or you dislike him, LeBron James is the first player in NBA history to surpass 39,000 career points. The NBA's all-time scoring leader also reaches this milestone as the Lakers go undefeated in the NBA Cup. And
I'm not as I've never been a LeBron fan, but I'm not a super fan. I can appreciate what he does, but the longer he's been in the league, the more I respect him, because you see his basketball knowledge and the effect he has on other players.
Yeah.
But also now, when someone made a point today, oh, do you know that you're older than the head coach of Utah? And he was laughing. And he's like, seriously? Wow. And you sit there and think, yeah, but LeBron's also probably got more game experience, certainly more basketball IQ, and fitness-wise, he's 38, 39, and he's running rings around people who are 20 years as junior.
Whatever your thoughts are about the player,
you've got to respect that.
And the whole debate, about the GOAT. And I'm not a fan of talking about GOATs whilst you're still a player. That's a bit, I don't know, I'm not a fan of that. But whatever you think, you have to admire the achievement.
Oh, yeah.
He's the only person to have done it. He is, 38 or 39 now?
39 now, I think.
And he's averaging roughly I'm guessing 27 points for all the seasons he's been in the NBA.
In the last season, most of players are averaging about 11 in their 21st. The 5 players who made it to 21 seasons, that's like Dirk, Vince Carter, people like that. They only got like 8 to 11 points average. He's getting like 28. He's getting 30 minutes.
I think we should do a show, no matter how long it is, even if it's a short one, about that. I think it deserves it. And just talking about like ages and stuff, there's a great one. I don't think it was this season. It might have been last season, but there's a player who comes on. He comes into this game, and it's his first season. Yep. And he goes up to LeBron and says, and the cameras are on him during the game, goes, "Hey, you played against my dad."
Yeah.
And he looks at him and is like, "What?" And he goes, "You played against my dad. He was in the league. And you played against him in your first game in the NBA." And LeBron turns around and goes, "Man, you don't do that to me, making me feel old."
Yeah.
But yeah, you can't look. No. 39K, you cannot not admire that achievement. And
you can only get a higher score on NBA 2K.
Yeah, it's
that's
he's got to be looking at 40K this season now, for sure. So LeBron James, well done.
My first bit of NBA news. Did you know that the Hawks in Indiana just played a game, 157, 152? That's 309 points combined as a game.
Wow. Oh, I didn't know that.
And they only finished 5 points apart. That's outrageous. Go watch it. It's literally a points for points.
Smokes.
It's outrageous. Did you know that a famous ex-Newcastle player, Ken Notage, actually passed away recently?
Yeah, I did see that. Yeah.
And that was actually on the BBL. But he spent 14 years with Newcastle, but it's actually Sunderland when they transferred to Newcastle.
Wow.
Which I thought was really, because you see pictures of him with Sunderland, and then it's pictures of him with Newcastle, and then he was co-owner with Paul Blake. And then he's minority owner and stuff. But there's a really nice article. And then I think Newcastle have done that, but he was also part of the rugby club. And he was the chairman of, or ran the rugby club up there, up in Sunderland or Newcastle as well, for like 13 seasons. But so they've done a tribute as well. So, I mean, he was the most I think he's the most capped England player.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So it was like, I was looking at it going, wow, I didn't know this, because it was just in our youth, really, really early, in the early days of BBL. But to all his family and everything, he obviously our sympathies. But yeah, it was some really nice pieces out there on Ken. And there's the Newcastle connection.
Yeah. Okay, Mark, we got an NBA Cup update. I'm not saying that in-season tournament stuff. I don't like it. So first things first, I got to say, if you have got some spare time, go and check out the last 5 minutes, 6 minutes of the Houston Rockets taking on the Pelicans. It's as exciting as it gets, and again, it's highlighting why the NBA Cup is so special. It is this, double
absolutely
header.
Won, haven't they?
Yeah,
They've absolutely knocked out the park with doing that.
Great thing. But so just an update from the NBA Cup. In the Eastern Conference, you have got the Indiana Pacers have clinched a place in the quarterfinals. Just behind them, the Milwaukee Bucks, not confirmed yet, Boston Celtics. And you have, Miami Heat, Brooklyn Nets, Cleveland Cavs, Orlando Magic, close on the tail for second and third. and then off to the Western Conference.
But Indiana, Milwaukee, Boston, Miami, and LA are the only ones who have not lost.
Yeah.
And LA at the moment are the only team who've won all games.
Yeah, so that's what literally what was going on next. So in the Western Conference, LA have finished all their games. They've clinched position in the quarterfinal. Second, Sacramento, New Orleans Pelicans. They are third. Again, if you check out the game against the Rockets, fantastic game. At the moment, that wild card is the Timberwolves. But you've got Phoenix Suns, Denver Nuggets, close on their heels, but out of the competition now. Portland Trailblazers, Memphis Grizzlies, San Antonio Spurs, the Washington Wizards, and the Detroit Pistons.
Yep.
All of those teams are out.
Yep.
They are officially out. They're still playing games, but they are officially out of the cup. So, yeah, like all eyes on what happens over the next couple of weeks.
Add some new weight to all the games, doesn't it?
People are getting frustrated.
People are getting, they're bringing some anger, aren't they, to the table? That's for sure.
Yeah.
A lot of spice in the games.
I've got another topic that I think we could do. I think we should do another discussion, another podcast on this.
Let's do it.
And I'm just going to throw this thought out in space and let's do a podcast on it, okay? The NBA are doing an all-star game, like West versus East.
You think we should be part of that? I agree.
Yeah. Just listen to this. This is the potential Western Conference starters. Have they arguably created one of the best teams ever made here, ever assembled, Mark? So at guard, Steph Curry. At guard, Luka Doncic. At forward and captain, the Joker. Forward, Kevin Durant. Forward, LeBron James. Could you argue that is the greatest Western Conference team ever assembled?
I find it interesting you put Jokic as the captain and not LeBron.
Wow, he's MVP.
Yeah.
I think we should do another podcast on that.
I think the whole in-season
topic.
tournament needs a whole thing on that, because this in-season tournament, I think it's fair to say, NBA, they absolutely knocked it out of the park, haven't they?
Oh, you stopped that clap.
Yeah, I did. They only get a short one. It isn't all the way through.
No,
but
it's
absolutely
fantastic.
changed it. And you see some teams like the Lakers, then they're like really, really want it. And all the teams that are out, a lot of the teams that suck in the league. But some of the people you go, oh, you're doing better here in the in-season tournament than you are maybe in the league at the moment. And someone like Dallas is doing really well in the league, but badly in the in-season tournament. And you've got to look at it and go, how are they putting their preference? Because it's something you brought up about what do you put the weight on? Because is the weight on winning the in-season tournament now? Or is the
Stop saying in-season tournament. It's called the NBA Cup.
So what's more important, the NBA Cup or winning the playoffs?
Oh, I think...
Or winning the league? Because if, look at all you got to do is look at Milwaukee. They've won the league, and then they've won the league, and actually then they get knocked out first round of the playoffs, and everyone's like, oh, you're rubbish. You go, they finished at the top, but it doesn't mean anything. You have to basically win the playoffs. So you could be basically just get into the playoffs, get to the finals and win, like the last year's
like I said to you, in 50 years' time, you're going to look back and going to go, who was the first team to win the NBA Cup? Wow, they were the Lakers or whoever.
Yeah, I think they're really gunning for that.
LeBron is very...
I reckon they're gunning for it.
Legacy now.
Yeah,
so he's like, bam.
First
they're looking at that.
If they win that cup, and then they also, if they do it right, they can win the cup and also win the league.
Start saying who's doing a double.
Well, why not? Why?
Well, let's
if he does that, I predict it. If he wins the cup and he wins the league, he's retiring.
He'll retire. Of course he will.
On top.
Go on top, yeah. I think why don't we do this? Once the top 4 have been assigned for the cup, let's do a podcast just on the NBA Cup up to that point.
Yeah,
that's
totally. We'll do that.
And then we can do one on LeBron James. We've got 2 NBA only coming up.
Yeah, sounds good. Right, well, that's the end of the show. Thank you very much for listening. If you haven't listened to all our episodes previously, go back and check them out. And don't forget to send us an email, ukbasketballpodcast@gmail.com, or go on our Instagram and send us loads of abuse, because we always really appreciate that.
I am Paul. Goodbye. But as before I go, if badminton was a good sport, I'd watch it. But I don't.
Well,
Goodbye.
I'll never play a game where the aim is to hit a cock. Goodbye.
Wow.